You say, when I'm not conjuring innovative ways to merge design and education, I can be found sipping coffee or kombucha, daydreaming about design trends, or plotting world domination through creative
And
expression.
we are creative beings. We co-create every day. The beauty of technology and embracing it and growing with it, alongside it, and teaching it is you learn that you're not just here to survive, you're here to create, you're here to expand yourself. It finds its way into streams of, and they would do the same on the other side, and we would have these video sessions of us just connecting with other children in different parts of the world. He's thinking about his thinking, and he's 10, as the source of pedagogy, and they don't really see themselves merging that pedagogy with technology.
Knowing, having the wisdom to know when speed is not a factor that can be rushed. So, Gizelle Simpson, thank you very much for being a guest on my podcast today. You want to tell us a little bit more about where you are, what you do? I've got a couple of things that you've sent me that I really, really want to dig my heels into. Some profound things that you've mentioned that I think is going to steer the conversation, but just a little bit about yourself. You know, you are involved with the education department. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. In a full-time capacity since 2010. And prior to that, obviously like contract and more like out of that field. But yeah, more in a permanent capacity from 2010. And in that time, I've taught at a high school in a very rural area, and then moved from there and then headed up digital innovation at a very well resourced school. And I was there for 2.5 years and then moved to the district office where I then did e-learning for one of the metros, and then moved now to the provincial office at the Cape Teaching and Leadership Institute, where I do program design and development
Okay.
for teachers across the province.
I think it's just important to disclaim upfront that you are in your personal capacity.
I'm in my personal capacity, yes. So not
So,
representing the education department in any shape or form here, speaking in my personal capacity
yeah,
on
which
this
is good because
podcast.
that's why you were invited. I want to hear what you think. You've just said you've taught at a rural school, you've taught at a
Yes,
well-resourced school, so you've got both sides of the spectrum, which is
absolutely.
excellent for an opinion. I mean, it's you perfectly positioned to talk about the challenges on both sides. The fact that you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile, and I actually want to read this. You know, it's right at the top of the list of things I want to start with. You say, when I'm not conjuring innovative ways to merge design and education, I can be found sipping coffee or kombucha, daydreaming about design trends, or plotting world domination through creative expression. Wow. World domination through creative expressions. What do you mean with that whole sentence? Conjuring innovative ways to merge design and education. Is it graphic or is it more analytical, abstract technology? And world domination through creative expression. I love that. I love that.
I just think as human beings, I think we far too little we are tapping into the fact that we are not meant to survive in this world. We are meant to thrive, and we are creative beings. We co-create every day. So my goal through life is, as I acquire different skills, be it in ethic, be it in e-learning, be it in motivational speaking, be it now where I currently find myself in program design, is always to find ways to merge those skill sets, but stay true to being a creative being. And that's how we're not, well, I say world domination, but it's like my little world, right? So we can only impact and influence the areas we find ourselves in, and when we do that, it spills over into other areas and into other people's lives.
Okay, so I want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on my world. You just said it's not the world, it's my world. But with EdTech and now with AI, which we are going to be talking about, doesn't it actually open up the whole world? And that will change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for the longest time, I think like when I started engaging with ethic, you'd hear about like global citizenship, and you think like, what is that even, right? Like, how do I become like I'm in my little dorpy? How am I going to possibly get access and become a global citizen? Because in your mind, back 10, 15 years ago, you'd think the only way I could see the world is to travel. And if I'm not well traveled, well, then I'm not a global citizen. So when I'm talking about my world, is giving myself access to become part of a global civilization and the people around me in my sphere, be it a learner, a colleague, somebody that I'm mentoring, to give them the ability to access that within their world.
Okay, and then we add another word or another descriptive expression, which is called digital citizenship. So now you're a global citizen and you are a digital citizen, and each comes with its own rules and its own challenges. And
Absolutely.
then we throw AI. We throw AI at the world, and we expect everybody to just fit in. Just march in order. But it is not that easy, is it? I mean, just to get this conversation started right now, I had to go through a couple of technical challenges.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the rural school. I mean, let's just go there a little bit. What would typically be the digital citizenship of a child in grade 4, grade 8, somewhere in a rural area where connectivity isn't even always constant?
Yeah.
What
And
does it
it
mean?
wasn't, I think of like back when I was experiencing that, I remember coming off from like maternity leave and coming into my classroom, and there's like a whiteboard in my classroom and an e-beam. And this is the time of like in education where now we're going through game changer, right? We're bringing technology. It's so exciting into the classroom. And I'm just thinking, like, I've got such a huge weight on my shoulders because imagine just this whiteboard now becoming a white elephant or like a substitution. Like, I'm already struggling. I'm teaching English. It's literally a foreign language in this little dorpy when I'm trying to teach these kids Shakespeare. How am I going to even like bring this thing into the classroom? We're riddled with gangsterism, we're riddled with kids being truant from class. So their idea of digital citizenship was non-existent. They didn't understand what that was. They were just like a citizen in a town. And that's why I bring you back to the fact that I say we are not meant to just survive. And the beauty of technology and embracing it and growing with it alongside it and teaching it is you learn that you're not just here to survive, you're here to create, you're here to expand yourself. And so I think it was there, that moment also, where I saw like I could open up these kids, or technology was opening up these kids' minds and the possibilities that they saw. Like they didn't understand there was an N7 and they didn't understand that there was a canal walk. Like they never thought of that. And to be able to take them to those places without taking them to those places, it was just amazing. And since then, I just was like, this is here. And the quicker I adopt, the quicker I learn and I adopt it, the easier it is for me to engage and connect with the future in front of me, which is the kids, which is the people I engage with.
So yes, here's a thought experiment for you. I had a discussion with one of the previous podcasts that is already published for Zonke Ngidi, that is from the Leap Institute. Don't know if you've had any dealings with the Leap schools at all, from where you are working right now. But they specifically, or not specifically, but they deal a lot with the emotional side of these learners, like you say, gangsterism, and truancy and so forth. That is where they want to zoom in, and they've got a very novel approach where life orientation becomes a catalyst, to actually have like a therapy session and not just a one-way street of passing over the curriculum. which I found fascinating while we were talking. But the conversation went to a point of ambition, where I was asking the question, what do we do about ambition amongst the learners? And she had to correct me literally on expectation of the word ambition. Because she said, what is ambition? If you are sitting 100 kids in a small classroom in Eastern Cape and you're sharing chairs, literally, that was a real life example. They were, I think it was 100 grade 12s who are writing their final exams at the end of this year. And when she walked into the classroom, they were sitting two on a chair, not two at a table, two on a chair. You know, what do you define as ambition for such a learner? Digital citizenship, global citizenship. You're mentioning real examples, Camel Walk, Table Mountain. That is not even an ambition because they are not exposed to that. So how would you come into that conversation of from a learner perspective now, specifically a learner perspective, the kids, the children, and it's not just South Africa. There are children all across the world that are being neglected by the system. The system seems to be, I wouldn't say very top-notch expectations, but it's sort of like in the middle. And you do have kids that are literally not exposed even to that, technology and experience-wise and ambition. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? What do we do with the kids, the children in the world that we need to uplift? We need to create something from them that can thrive in this modern world with all its technology and fast-paced movements and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, I think like, and I think it even hit more when I had my own child, right? Because you see, and I mean the books that I'm reading as well, like you see that when we are kids, when you are a toddler, you are constantly imagining. You are constantly daydreaming. You are imagining you can fly. You are jumping off couches and you are dreaming. And then at some point you enter schooling and you are told, like, listen here, can you focus? Like, this is what we're doing here today. Like, we gotta cover this. Like, you're not daydreaming. Or let's be realistic. Like, you live here. You can't, that's not something that is a real or it's attainable. Or a child saying, I want to become a YouTuber. I want to become a vlogger. I want to become a gamer. And you're like, okay, but that doesn't pay money. Like, you gotta go and study at a university. So for me, it's always been like every child, every person is born with a dream. And if we nurture a dream, if we continue to nurture um, passion and dreams, it finds its way into streams of income. It finds its way into a child being its authentic self, a person being its authentic self, and then being able to find ways to connect with others in the world. And so I see it even with my kid who's like, do you think that this game that I'm playing, I'll ever be able to meet the developer? And I'm like, of course. Do you think if I create this game that, of course, like, keep a child dreaming and you are capable of anything that you think of because the world is actually smaller than you think. And to bring the world into the classroom, to bring the world back into the child's life, into the circumstances, to bring dreaming back in there.
Okay, so I want to get very practical with you on that point. When you say bring the world in, um, give us a couple of real examples. I can think now, for instance, about YouTube. You said you took those rural kids and you actually took them to Canal Walk in Cape Town. How did you do that? Did you use Google Maps? Did you use Google Earth, YouTube? Talk to
Yes,
us
and
about how do we make this practical to take the world to the child rather than taking the child to Europe, for argument's sake, just as a
yeah,
very far off destination.
I remember like back then when I was teaching, I we tell them the stories about, and I mean, again, I said this is like English was a foreign language there. So even writing in English was like, oh no, why do we have to do this? And I tell them, like, back when I was little, I remember in the news, not in the newspaper, in like magazines, there was a pen pal section. And you could write to pen pals. Like I was sending letters to Durban and Pretoria and Bloemfontein, and I had friends and pen pals, and then I had to go to the post office, and they were like, "What? Like that's wild." They couldn't think of that. And then I was like, guys, do you know that we can talk to kids in Sweden? And they were like, okay, first of all, like, tell us, where is that? What is that? So now we're going to a map. Like, this is Sweden. This is what the people in Sweden experience in terms of weather. And how's that different to your climate and things like that. And then I connected with teachers in Sweden, and we would have Skype exchanges. So we would plan for like what questions, knowing now what we know, we've explored a little, like what questions do you want to ask the kids? And they would do the same on the other side. And we would have these video sessions of us just connecting with other children in different parts of the world. We were in India. Um, we were in China, and that was like also an experience because even for them now, hearing someone speak in a different accent and the English is also sounding what they would consider to be broken made them feel like it's relatable. Like, man, you're always telling us, like, that's not how you pronounce the word. And now we're seeing, but other people also struggle with English because it's not their first language. So it was like connecting things like that. I was the OG influencer back in the day. If I'm going on a trip to Canal Walk, I was videoing it. I was coming back to them to be like, guys, this is the N7. This is how long the road is. This is what happens at Canal Walk. And it creates again that where they're like, oh my gosh, that's out there. How do I get there now? How do I actually get myself from this place to that place? And that's where you get them, right? Where you then are able to have a moment of like, right, now I'm able to impart knowledge. Now I'm able to teach you, but also learn from you. And that's why I'm like, teaching is such a beautiful calling. It's such a beautiful gift to be in a space of like, you are able to teach, but you are also able to learn. And I think that's what makes the best experience in a classroom.
I'm going to put I wouldn't call it a challenge, maybe a suggestion from your side, because that question that I asked Zonke was coming from a perspective of I'm a math teacher or math tutor. That's my world. My whole world revolves around mathematics. And people sometimes look at me very funny and say, it's not something isn't quite right up there. But I see a much bigger picture that mathematics can open for somebody. Just that critical thinking, the ability to question and not just accept. Our curriculum in South Africa, which is the CAPS curriculum, there's actually a paragraph in the mathematics curriculum that addresses this. This is the reason why mathematics is important. It is not about the trigonometry or the algebra or the calculus. It's about what you learn when you do mathematics. Now, I
Yes.
summarize it on my side. This is what I've actually built my business around, is I summarize it in, of all the subjects, the one that is most practically geared to teach you how to question and also to ask questions is mathematics. Because if you do not understand trigonometry, you're going to sit there for a very long time and get frustrated, because if you don't get somebody to explain it to you, it's not going to make sense. Once somebody explains, yes, then you can start seeing the patterns. You can see, oh, okay, I see that, and whatever. So you have to start by questioning. And that's the skill that I think is neglected in the world. That's my personal view. I think people are taking too much because on face value. Somebody says it's so, and they, okay, it must be so because that person has got some kind of authority, and because he said that the sky is green, it must be green. The fact that I'm seeing it as blue, my mistake. I want people to be more critical thinkers. That's just my personal mission in the world. But when I say ambition, I have found that the kids don't have that drive to want to
Mm.
succeed in mathematics. You know, it's the love to hate subject for a lot of children. They would love to hate mathematics, and when they get to grade 10, they drop it. You know, they don't want to go forward with it because it is just not the type of subject that they see any value in. So that combined with the 30% pass rate that we are saddled with, from my perspective, says there's no ambition. They just don't have that drive to want to excel and succeed. Now, the world has changed a lot. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was still possible for you to go to university. These days, with AI, does it really make a lot of sense to go and study for 4 years? Because by the time you come out, your job may not even exist anymore. In the world of AI, the fast changing world since 2023. But I want to throw it back to you. Shall we change the word ambition to aspiration, maybe? And then,
Mm.
depending on what you answer, I want you then to elaborate maybe on your physical innovation. I love this. I really love the Skype conversation with kids in Sweden. I mean, that is so innovative. I really, if I had a hat, I would tip it to you. It is so brilliant. Shall we not maybe, and this is my suggestion for you to elaborate a little bit on, shall we not change the word ambition to aspiration and then see what we can do to nurture the aspiration in these kids and
Mm.
see where that takes us rather than coming in from the perspective, as I've done to my own mistake, to come in from the word ambition.
Agreed, agreed. And I'm listening to you. I'm absorbing and digesting what you are saying, and I'm like, it's absolutely true that you speak of aspiration and you speak of math, and I am not great at math, but I love math, and I love math because I see the potential that kids have when doing it. And I think combined with language, because I watch my kid now and he's very good at math. Oh, he's so good at math. Like I sit there and I'm like, wow. And not at wow because he's good at math. I'm wowing for watching his processes in his brain. Like watching him think about math is absolutely, I don't even know what the word is. I'm just like my jaw drops every time. So whenever he's sitting with math, I sit with him so I can soak in what he's experiencing. And that's why I say combined with language, because I watch him as well when he's talking himself through a problem. And he's like, okay, I see that there, but you know what? I observe maybe this is where I could have, oh, yeah, 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 I see that. And then talk himself through that. I also think, like, if there is, and I think that is the thing, like, once a kid has also got an affinity and a hold on language, it's easier for them to navigate into spaces of thinking critically. Because if I'm reading something and I can't comprehend what I'm reading, it's so difficult then to be able to even get a standpoint on what it is that I want to say to this, what it is that I want to get out of this, and how I would convey this to someone else. So I think like language, because I'm a language teacher, was very important for me in his foundation. So, and then from there, I was like, that's where we build. So we have you have a good command of the language, and now you're going to explore that in your other subjects. And I also think with math, it's so easy, and I think this is where AI comes in, and why I'm like, teachers especially should really explore this. AI gamification, right? We were taught that, you keep hearing the word resilient, like you got to become resilient. And what does that look like? That's like, oh, I'm struggling in life and I can't make ends meet, and now like, yo, I'm just pushing through, I'm resilient. Like, that's not it. Resilience is, I'm playing this game and I know I've got 3 lives, but I also know, like, if on the third life, Now the game's gonna pause and I gotta respawn and come back. Like I will try it again. Now, when we're working with kids, our natural inclination, and we even use words like failing. Why do we say you failed at that? You didn't fail. You just learned how not to do it again. You just learned what didn't work in that moment. And so I'm like, when I watch him go through math, he's not giving up. He's like, okay, this doesn't look right. Like the other day, he did a sum and it was like 23 remainder 24 hours. And he's like, this doesn't look. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't even know what I'm looking at. And he's like, let me just test this theory, you know? And I was just like, he's thinking about his thinking and he's 10. So I'm like, if as a teacher you are not thinking about your thinking, if you are not thinking about your teaching and thinking about your methodology and thinking about how you're engaging with the kid, like how are your kids going to be doing that? So since he's been doing math, I've got like this newfound respect and love for math teachers, because I'm like, there's a part of me just like, wow. And now I'm watching him do the math and bring it into coding, and watching him bring the math and bringing it into when he's using ChatGPT. And I'm like, he's got three screens open. It's ChatGPT, it's the game. He's watching a YouTuber, and he's developing his own game. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, there's a lot of tabs open in your brain. And then I watch him engage with chat. Like, no, this is clickbait. This is not true. Like, I've researched this. That comes from him being able to critically think from math. Because he's also like, my teacher says this is the method, but she gave me three methods. So I don't like the method she uses. I'm using this one because I understand it better. And I'm like, that's the beauty and why I even like respect teachers like that. Math teachers are not just saying this is the curriculum and this is the one method. They are like, let me expose you to all. I love how his teacher said, why drink just Coke? Why don't you want to try Fanta and Sprite and then see what you like? So yeah, I take my hat off to you, math teachers.
Well, that's the beauty of mathematics. I've got this favorite saying that says mathematics is the poetry of logic. Because
Oh,
when you want to take your logical thinking and you want to create something beautiful, you take mathematics, and it becomes poetry if you recognize it, like your son does, and you are now starting to look over his shoulder and see, I see something here. There's something beautiful
yeah.
in it. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying of mathematics is the language in which the universe was written. Have you ever heard that?
No.
I think it was Paul Dirac, or one of the guys, one of the early scientists who said, I stand to be corrected, but it comes down to the fact that the universe is written in the language of mathematics. Now, if we
Makes
go to
sense?
what the Bible says the creation, the universe was spoken into existence. So there's definitely a correlation between language and mathematics. And if we
Man.
look at AI, ChatGPT, Grok, DeepSeek, Claude,
Lord.
Gemini, all of them are called large language models.
Yes.
But do you know how they actually work? That in the background, we think about it
With
as
a whole
artificial.
lot of code and numbers and words and
Well, it's actually pure mathematics. It literally comes down to probability. So the example that they often use is if I tell you as a human, I say, complete the following sentence. A cat sat on the, what would you say?
that.
Yeah, yes, yes. But now a computer doesn't have that context. It doesn't have that
Yeah.
context. I mean, it can say the cat sat on the dog, the cat sat on the car. It doesn't have that context. So what it does, it figures out through millions and millions of experiments, different words, and it actually gets to math. And then it realizes through its training that the probability is higher for math than grass, for argument's sake. So the
Mm.
probability adjusts the weight. So next time it gets to something the same, it again follows the probability sequence. And that's how large language model works. That's how, why we
And that's
employ
how
it.
algorithms are created, right?
Just say that again.
And could that be also how like algorithms are created?
Well, algorithms, this is something I'm going to stick my head out a little bit here and sound if I know what I'm talking about. But when we talk about algorithms, we are talking about formulas, and when we talk about a formula, I actually had this discussion in one of the podcasts with a coding teacher, robotics and coding, about if I need to write a computer program to do certain things for the children. And again, coming back to mathematics, I use this specific example of the exponential laws. If I have to teach a child the first exponential law, I can then write a code that says, say, x to the power of 4 times by x to the power of 2 is equal to something. And then I can code it to accept x to the power of 6 or x to the power of 4 plus 2. So it becomes if then statements and so forth. But it's a code,
Mm,
it's an algorithm that it follows, and the computer program will follow that code or that algorithm forever faultlessly. It will not make a mistake anywhere, it will keep doing the same thing. But when we talk about large language models, I can come to ChatGPT and I can say to it, what is a to the power of 3 times by a to the power of 4? And it recognizes the context of my question. It doesn't recognize the variables and the exponents. It simply recognizes the context of the question is the first exponential law, which is different from an algorithm in coding that is only working for that specific parameters in which it was defined. So that is what
wow.
makes AI so brilliant. Brilliant is the fact that it can
I'm learning so much from you.
but yeah, this is where this whole podcast idea came from, because it opens such a wide world out there because of the language that comes in,
Yeah.
and the fact that we now have a tool that can understand context and nuances. So you can speak to it like you and I are speaking, or your son speaks to you or his teacher. There's a context of the conversation that the other party can pick up on and elaborate.
Yes.
And when we talk about AI in education, we tap into, or we need to tap into that strength.
Mm.
Yes, AI, your large language models can do a lot for the teacher in terms of admin, in terms of helping to for instance, grade according to Bloom's taxonomy, all of these things. There's a lot that AI can help to make teachers more effective, faster,
Yeah.
but my question in that I'm trying to address in this podcast is, what does AI do for the child? Where does the learning come from? Yes, it is a great admin tool, very great. It can make you faster in administration and setting up papers and lesson plans and everything. But when that child, your child, is sitting there with long division, you know, how can AI help that child understand long division? Because he's now, I think the example you used was 24 and remainder 24, or 23 and remainder
Yeah.
24, something.
24. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so now he can actually, I mean, if I was there, if I was literally sitting there or something, he would have said to me, Harry, just come here quickly. Uh, why doesn't this make sense? I've got this gut feel that something isn't working here, but why? Or he might come and say, I think it's not making sense because the remainder is bigger than, the final answer or the divider, or any of a million different ways that he can come and phrase his question, and I can then respond to his question, and he learns something from it. How can
Mm.
AI be used to do that exact same thing? That's my question, because there's
Yeah.
learning involved, not just spoon feeding. I just want to say one thing before I ask you to comment on that point. Failure. Do you know what that a fail, and I mean, this is tongue in cheek, it's not genuinely so, but did you know that fail is an abbreviation for first attempt in learning?
Learning.
You know,
Yes.
so you have to fail. It's part of the learning process. They say to err is human. Just don't wear out the eraser before the pencil. That. But I mean, the whole idea of making mistakes and bouncing it off yourself or against a source of knowledge is so important, and we need to get people away from the fact that fail equals failure. It's not.
Yeah, I think it's the experience also in the spaces we find ourselves, right? That word has gotten, like, how many people, if you had to ask them that, would be like, okay, it's the first attempt at learning. No, the notion behind the word carries so much weight that when a child hears like I failed, it's like I cannot achieve it anymore. Like that's the end of the road. And to comment on your question of like how does I think again it's so critical that these conversations are had, Giri, because I don't know if it is, and I mentioned this when even coming into edtech, right? Like you don't see that it's a teacher or whoever's using the technology is not fearful of the technology. They are also fearful of making mistakes. I feel like traditional teaching, and I speak for myself, and when I was growing up, was like a teacher needed to know all the answers. Like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you the teacher. So you would come, and if you didn't know the answer, you would not say, oh, okay, let me think about that. Why don't we figure that out together? I actually don't know. Like, you never wanted your learner to see you in a position of like, you got that, and you think about how AI is coming in now, and at such a rapid speed. People don't want to adopt. They don't want to adopt because they don't know. And so now you are sitting in a space where, like, my kid is at home exploring AI, using AI, challenging the things that AI is giving him, and going back to a classroom where necessarily like the teacher maybe isn't exposed or doesn't want to. So it's bridging that gap. And I think like teachers have to, in the education spaces, we have to look at it. We have to see it as not just a tool for us, because in it being a tool for us, it frees us to think for the kid in terms of how can I bring this into their spaces. Like, I'm like, why are teachers, the conversations we are having, teachers are like, but then the kid's going to write the whole essay in AI. And the kid's going to do this in AI. But I'm like, but you're also not giving room inside the classroom for the child to critically look at the. I think I'm
Okay.
back.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. And this
I feel like that was the universe way of being like, Giselle, shut up.
I'll just edit this pause out, and but I'm gonna start from this sentence that we started this conversation about the realities and the practical problems of technology, and we've just experienced it again. So this
Again.
isn't failure. I didn't fail. You didn't fail. The technology didn't fail. It was the first attempt in learning. Let's just carry on from here and carry on. So I don't know if you can remember what you were saying, if you want to proceed with that, or whether I must just take the conversation, further. It depends on you.
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, it's important that teachers, in as much as they see the benefit for the tool for creating lesson plans, it's very like that's the surface level of what it can do, right? Um, to what is it that we want the learner to be able to eventually do with that tool, and to critically assess and look at what is the information I'm receiving and how do I filter that? But also, how do I advance my learning without having to have like 24/7 contact time with the teacher when I have a personal, yeah.
That is actually the point that I'm steering towards, because I'm going to put a scenario on the table for you from your perspective as standing in a classroom, and also now where you are currently working more from a let's call it a vantage point of looking at the teaching profession. If and this is really something I want to get your honest opinion on, because I use it in just about every conversation anyway. So the regular viewers are going to get tired of my arguments soon, but it's just something that I feel so passionate about, because it drives what I do. If you are a teacher teaching English, let's say first language, what's called home language, I think, and you have, for argument's sake, 30 learners in your class, and your period is 40 minutes long. The mathematics tells you that you have got 1 minute per child in that period. Individual attention, you have got 1 minute on average per child, where you still need to get through your curriculum. You still need to teach them Macbeth, which is what your lesson plan is all about. That 40 minutes of the period is taken up by your curriculum that you need to get through. Where do you find time for that individual learner? And then when that child goes home this afternoon, you're not even there anymore. They can't put up their hand. They can't stay after the school, or after break, or come to you in break time and say, please just, I don't understand, whatever. You are literally, as a teacher, not there. Now, yes, you can say, okay, I'll be available for my learners on WhatsApp. They can send me questions on WhatsApp in the evenings when they do the homework. Is that fair on teachers? I mean, they also have
Hmm.
families. They also have private time, family time. Do you really expect a teacher to be available at night, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, for the struggles that the kids have with the academics? Is that something that really has merit in asking the teacher to be available after school? What do you say of that? That whole disconnect between what the teacher can do and should do in class time, and where learning really takes place when you start working on the questions. Start thinking about your thinking, as you so rightly put it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're very generous in saying like 1 minute per child, because I'm like, the reality is there's not 30 children in a class. There is 60 children in a class, and between a 40-minute curriculum, there's 10 minutes of them getting to the class, and 5 minutes of them settling down, and 2 minutes of them taking out the book. So technically, 0.5 seconds per child. But you make such a valid point of, and again, I'm just like, teaching and learning is not just classroom based. It's everywhere. And it's how do we get that learning happens everywhere and anywhere, and how do we get teachers into our kids' homes? How do we make them pick up a device and rather want to learn from it, use it as a tool for learning instead of using it as a tool to doom scroll? Right? So that's, yeah, sorry, I was going to
No, no, no,
interrupt.
no. Please carry on. I'll tap in right now.
You were saying tap in, you can tap in.
Well, you know what? You actually mentioned a very important word for me there. It just immediately flagged something that we already talked about. That why would a child pick up a device to learn? I want to talk about what it means for that device to learn, or for the learning process. That's actually what this podcast was created for. But I want to tap into that idea of why would a child take out a device and not social media, not YouTube, not TikTok, but learn. Why? And it comes back, and I'm putting it out on the table for you to respond on that. The difference between ambition and aspiration. If there's an aspiration, there is no ambition for anybody to want to learn. I mean, by definition, learning is difficult. It's painful. It's not something that you just wake up one morning and suddenly you know quantum physics. It is a
Yeah.
painful process. To learn is not easy. However, if there is an aspiration, then it changes the focus. It changes the goalpost, because now suddenly there's something in it for me. Whereas ambition is, will I ever be good at soccer? Probably not. I'm not athletic enough, so I don't even have an ambition to become a soccer world champion. But do I have aspirations to be good at sport? it changes the question slightly, and now I might get up
Yeah,
from the couch and I can actually go and practice and exercise.
absolutely. And like I mentioned, I'll keep coming back to when I was teaching in that rural area, was that we don't appreciate something until we see the value of it. And when I was in that space, there was such fear to give a teacher a laptop, to put up a projector in the classroom because the children, they're gonna steal it. Like, you can't leave your e-beam there. The kid's gonna take it. You can't leave your cell phone there. And the minute I had shown them the value in that device, the value in the laptop and where it was taking them, the value in the cell phone and what you were learning from it, using it, how you were engaging with it, your digital footprint, and I could leave this there. They wouldn't take it because tomorrow, if it's gone, we won't be able to learn. We won't be able to use it. So it again, it comes down to like teaching them the value of that tool, any tool, teaching them the value of AI, working alongside AI, seeing how your brain is getting expanded and your thinking is expanded. Like I always say to my son, I mean, he's 10, but I hope that this is a skill that he'll take forever. Tomorrow, ma'am says we're going to do long division next week, guys. Like, why are you not exploring that before you go to the classroom? Like, go and research and see what is long division. Like, where did this come from? Who invented it? Who decided one night they were sitting there like, let's develop long division? And then when you go to the class and ma'am's ready to give that lesson, you might have a little bit of like, hey, I already kind of know where this is going. And when they start thinking like that, it's easier for them. And that's why I keep saying, man, like Gen Alpha and all the gens and the alphas that's gonna come after them, that's their world. They are curious. I love how my son said, Mom, do you know why I'm smart and why I love learning? And I was like, why? He says, because I'm curious. And I'm like, that's exactly it. Curiosity. A teacher, you forget that you were also once a learner and you were curious. And you didn't understand why when you asked your parents something and they said, I said so. You would be like, why? Why can't I go? Because I said so. Now you're doing the exact same thing to a kid. Like you gotta be like when they ask why, there is 1,000 reasons why. Yes, 1,000 reasons. Pick one. So it's keeping them curious, but you yourself, when you are in a position of sharing this knowledge and exposing kids and learners, and even in my spaces now, exposing teachers to AI, to the use of AI, the possibility of AI, you have to come curious. Because when you come curious, you're going to want to learn. You're going to want to take something, one small thing away from it, in order to build on that. And I think that's the beauty of AI, being able to see like how quickly I can access knowledge, but also how quickly I can create something. Because you shift your mindset shifts. Like I'm a consumer, I'm an end user, but now also like I'm consuming, but I can also create. I can give my ideas and AI can tell me what it looks like, whatever's happening inside my brain looks like. And so I think that's the sweet spot in education. It's finding like be curious, be open, but explore from even your kids' vantage point. Like hear what it is that they want to learn, how they want to learn. And if we get that right, like it'll be an easier integration of getting AI into the education spaces.
I'm so excited about what you just said that I'm going to predict that I'm going to take this into the next couple of podcasts as a quote. You've touched on something so brilliant, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. I just want to go back to the word curious. And you can tell this to your son, and this is to everybody out there, all the kids out there, and everybody who's curious. Albert Einstein was the person of the century, the 20th century. Without his contributions that he came up with in 1905, we would not be, in the world where we are in. He's just a brilliant mind, and I mean, we can talk forever about the impact that Albert Einstein had, but he said, "I'm nothing special. I'm just passionately curious."
Hmm.
That came from him. He said, "I'm nothing special. I'm just passionately curious."
Yes.
Questions, 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 questions. That is something that I think we need to nurture more, and AI
Yes.
is ideally suited for that. Ideally, and we'll come back to that in this conversation. I want to come back to what I wanted to say about what you've said, that maybe we should change the focus from using AI as something to question, but to use AI as something to create. I love that. I love that angle of when I use AI to write my essay, when I use AI to help me with my homework, when I use AI to take shortcuts in the learning process, I'm actually creating something. I'm creating a shorter path through the forest. I love that. I really love that. So thank you for that, Gizelle. That is definitely something that in my mind that I'm going to take forward, because it changes the focus on the learning process so much when we think about learning not as taking information in and processing it, but actually creating something new that works for me and maybe works for the rest of civilization, like Einstein. He created something out of nothing and he put it out there and it benefited the whole world. But that is so powerful. That is so powerful. So I don't know if you want to comment on it. I want to go back to a few things that you mentioned to me in your answers, but I just want to throw it back to you first if you want to respond.
And that's the thing. Like, look at you yourself. Like, think about the space you finding yourself in and what you've created. You see, and this is the thing that I'm like, every person has something inside of them, a gift, a purpose that they were born with. And you only tap into that when you get to a place of like, okay, I want to make something better. How do I do that with the tools around me? How do I create that with the tools around me? So yeah, man, that's how we should be inspiring our little kiddos.
But yeah, thank you for that. That was literally a highlight, probably of my life. To get that insight from you, it changes the viewpoint. So let's just go back a bit to practicalities and realities. The sentence that you've used that I want to just quote and talk about a little bit, because I think it's very important to also address. You mentioned here, it's a moment that shaped how you see education, but I want to come back to the nitty gritty of it, where you said that so many educators aren't struggling with technology, they're struggling to see themselves as capable using
Mhm.
technology. Now, the way this conversation needs to go is we need to find a way, and hopefully you've got some more profound moments, but we need to find a way in which AI, large language model, can be used as a learning tool, not the free versions. Because the free version has got, and I don't know if you want me to use that word so long, but in all the conversations I've had so far, there's one word missing from the free versions of AI. As good as they are, they don't have one word. Shall I tell it to you now, or shall I tell it to you later? What do you
No, I'm not the person. You must tell it to me now. It's gonna bother me the whole time.
think? Okay, that word that is missing from the large language models is pedagogy. It doesn't have
Mm.
pedagogy. It's a people pleaser. That's the word I always use. It's a people pleaser. So you ask it something, it gives it to you. It doesn't take you through a learning process because it wants to give you the answer. There's no tutoring or teaching involved in that process. So When we use the word pedagogy in the context of AI, we need to assume that the teacher must play a part in that. The teacher knows the pedagogy of their subject. So, for instance, I cannot even begin to comprehend how I'm going to teach somebody Macbeth. You know, that's the pedagogy that you've developed either from university or college, wherever you were, and in class experience over time. You know how Shakespeare should be taught. I don't. So we'll come back to that. But now, just touching on this sentence of teachers are not really struggling with technology, but they're struggling to see themselves as capable. You want to elaborate a little bit on that because it's a defining moment in education, as you said.
Yeah, because for me, it's always been like, and again, coming into the ethics space, e-learning was always seen as an add-on, right? Like, okay, we'll do this, and then e-learning is an add-on. Like, if your lesson has technology in it, great, but we don't expect that. We expect you just to know the content. Just teach the content. That's it. If you're using technology, okay, we'll kind of give you like an extra little tick box. So teachers don't see themselves as capable of engaging with the technology or capable of engaging with AI because they see themselves as the source of content knowledge, as the source of pedagogy. And they don't really see themselves merging that pedagogy with technology. Again, now that teacher sees AI, tech as aside from them, not integrated into the world that they live in. And yet, they're the ones that can pick up, that can tap their phone when they go pay, that can scan a QR code to fill in a form, but they still see themselves separate from technology in the classroom, AI in the classroom. Because as a teacher, the traditional thought is that you are pedagogy linked to content, not pedagogy linked to integrating tech and AI into content. So that is why I'm saying they don't struggle with the tech, they use the tech, but they struggle with being capable of integrating that into their pedagogy and meeting the person who's sitting in front of them, which is the kid who's fully functioning in that world. For most kids, know no other world other than a screen. So to integrate and connect there, because I'm sitting in a traditional role and thinking of pedagogy and content, I'm unable to see myself capable in that space.
I can attest to that because I started in e-learning in 2004, which was when we still used dial-up modems. It's such a world away to think that we had
Make
to.
that
Yeah,
sound.
yeah. But I mean, if somebody wanted to use the telephone and somebody else wanted to check emails, you can't do both. You have to either get a second telephone line or you have to wait your turn. It seems foreign to think that that wasn't centuries ago. I mean, it was 2 decades ago, that we were in a world. And the point I'm trying to make really is that at that stage in 2004, I think Facebook only came out in 2007, so I've been there where I saw the world change in terms of technology and connectivity with the iPhone. I think that also came around 2007, if I remember correctly. Suddenly, you now have mobile internet. You know, it's a different world that literally opened up in front of me. But I have discovered, and this goes to what you were just saying about the pedagogy and the technology living in two separate worlds, and it's not just teachers, it's people in general that they are quite happy to do social media, Facebook, and later Instagram and YouTube, all of those technologies. I mean, you were referring to Skype. I was there at this time when Skype started. Literally, that's when I started, when Skype was brand new. And if they knew what we now know about 2020, they would have stuck it out, because Skype was such a brilliant tool for remote learning and remote working. But the people around me that I saw, and that goes right down from the kids, but specifically the adults. They can do everything with the technology that is in front of them except learn. It's like education. I mean, they learn how to do online banking. They learn how to do online purchases. They learn how to do emails, web searches, mobile learning, everything. But it seems like education is always, it needs to be in the Victorian era. It needs to be archaic. It needs to be old school. You have to do it old school. You cannot learn using technology. It's been a source of frustration for me for what, 21, 22 years now. And I think with AI, the struggle is still real, but now
Mm,
we have a way of getting the teachers that are prepared to think beyond, just the world around them, to say, what, I can integrate my pedagogy with technology. I don't have to pair up. I can integrate. I can literally take my pedagogy and give it to the AI, and it can do what I would have done if I was there. And that concept is known as an agent. I'm not sure if you are aware of that side of the AI technology, but we call it an agent. And that's where you can actually take the AI and train it according to your own specifications. It can do what you actually wants it to do. So when we look at, if I look at the comments that you've written, there's a lot of emphasis also on the agency of the learner. And it's coincidental that you use the word agent or agency, and the technological description for what we are looking at is agent. The same
mm.
word pops up in two different contexts. But what would you say about the integration then? Just coming from a broad standpoint, what do we do going forwards from here? How do we treat learning in the age of AI?
I think it's just important, and in this space, you keep hearing, as a teacher, as an educator, you have to be a lifelong learner. And I'm like, okay, that's great. What does that mean? Does that mean I should be going on courses? I should be getting another degree, and then I am a lifelong learner? To me, if I say I'm a lifelong learner, it means I learn alongside a kid. I learn alongside the next generation, because that's the advancements, that's where it's coming from. It's harder for somebody who's been in traditional teaching, or has been in the system or a system for so long, to change thinking. That it's harder for us to imagine what that world in the future looks like. It's easier for a child whose native space is digital to see what the future looks like. Watch what they are watching, see what they are seeing, and then try and marry that with what you know, which is a range of expertise. There is legendary knowledge that we come with, having gone through those different types of, I almost want to be like, it was like a whole civilization, a whole era, right? You sit with legendary expertise and knowledge that will be able to hold, but will also be able to build on what the next generation is thinking and exploring. Because the lessons that they still need to learn, you've kind of already learned, but they see also the beauty and the magic, and they can adopt easier what is coming to them, that you are then able to springboard to tap into them, right? So for me, as an educator, as a person, as someone that's engaging in education and learning, your idea of lifelong learning should always be, how do I make, and I come back again to my world better in order to make the people in my circle better. Like, we are having this podcast and you are not even in my town, you're not in my city, right? But we connecting based off of an experience, knowledge and expertise that we have shared in some part, but we're also learning from each other. So it's about finding spaces, finding, especially in education, if your niche is math, like go full in on math and how to. If your niche is English and language, go fully in on language and how to integrate. Because work from the place you know to explore the place you don't. Don't explore the place you don't and then try to bring it into the place you know. So I don't know AI. Let me kind of bring it into English. Now I know English. Let me try and marry it with AI. Now I know math, and this is what I would like my learners to understand in math. And how do I get them to understand it? Right, let me marry that with AI. Yes, I know Macbeth, and I can see they're struggling. How do I marry that with AI? So work from a place of where you know, and then take what you don't know. But don't ever work from a place of, I don't know that, and now how do I bring what I know into that
That's
space?
a brilliant perspective, for teachers who need to adopt or want to adopt. I think everybody needs to adopt, but to get the want is the important bit. Is to not try and be something you're not. Just go and be what you
Yeah.
are. I had a conversation with a person from Australia and his partner. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And I specifically asked him to come onto the podcast because I read an article where he said, and we referenced that when that episode is published, everybody will actually hear him comment on his own comments. Where he said, for us to really thrive in the age of artificial intelligence, we need to become more human. And that was such an eye opener that we need to look at what makes us human and be more of that so that the AI can enhance that, not replace us. And in that mindset, I want to ask you about, because you deal obviously with a lot of schools and teachers, what are their fears about being replaced by AI? Because that's a worldwide fear at the moment. There's a lot of people that are worried that AI is coming for my job, which seems to be a red herring from what I can gather. It's not a question of AI so much replacing jobs as big companies deciding not to hire new people. Slight focus
Yeah.
difference, but AI is so effective that you can do a lot with less people because you empower them with AI. But what is your general perception from educators? Because I mean, in your responses to my questions, you do have a lot of empathy and sentiment for teachers, for educators. Are they worried about AI taking their jobs, or are they worried that AI is going to corrupt the minds of the kids? Which is the strongest sentiment there?
I think the biggest fear is that AI is going to corrupt the minds of the kids and not allow them to think or allow them to learn or make them lazy. I used to say, technology is not going to replace a teacher, but it will replace a teacher who's not willing to use it.
Hmm.
Like, if you're not willing to grow with it, like in the next intake of a new person that needs to come into this space, like, you're going to be redundant because you don't have the ability to keep up with what is expected or needed in how we are moving forward in education or how we're moving forward in the world. The biggest fear I do think that teachers have, and I don't necessarily know whether it is, maybe it'll just be like a fallback excuse for, oh, it's just going to corrupt the kids' minds so we don't touch it, right? Or it's genuinely a fear. But I do think like they are not being exposed enough. There's not enough conversations around the use of of AI, a lot of companies, and especially like we know with even coding and robotics, as soon as that became like a buzzword, you would see the pop-ups of like companies now reaching out to be like, we do coding and robotics, and we can give you this robot that can dance. And I'm like, that's great. How does the kid know what pattern recognition and algorithm and decomposition is behind why the robot is dancing? So it's like the same with AI now. You have a whole range of tools, and you don't know like what is the best thing, where am I giving or taking. So I think it's a blend and a combination of literally being like, this could take my job, or I'm gonna put my head in the sand and just be like, content, tick the box, or the kids are really going to become not able to think and lazy.
Well, did you and me really become lazy because we had access to calculators? Whereas our grandparents had to physically sit there with their minds and add all the numbers together, and when they did logarithms and trigonometry in maths, they had to take up the books, and look up the tables for the values. You and me have had access to calculators, and I don't consider myself brain lazy because I can use a calculator well, to make me
Exactly.
faster. So 50 years from now, these kids will say to their children, I'm not lazy, I've just learned to be faster because I learned how to use AI to increase
Yeah.
my productivity. I can get so much more done in so much less time because of a technology. And a calculator is just technology.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a time when calculators weren't allowed in exams, or you can't use it here because, and now it's completely different. No one even considers a calculator. Like, who's even buying that? Like, you got a calculator on your phone. Um, but it's interesting that you say that as well, because I'm like, yeah, like the way in which 50 years from now you'll think about something, and I think it's also like the conversations that we have around instant gratification. Like we want instant gratification. Like I want that answer now, so that therefore I'm not thinking. And that's not the truth. I want the answer now. I want to make faster decisions that will affect my world quicker. So it's not about instant gratification. The children of today, they just want things now. We had to wait long for a new pair of sneakers. We had to wait long to access. We had to go to the library, but it's like time is now. It's irrelevant. Like in order for my son to be able to learn something in the quickest time possible, he is using AI, but he's still, as you mentioned, he's questioning. He's not just saying, I will take this McDonald's burger because the drive-through is 5 minutes and I'll eat it. He'll be like, Mom, I think we must lay off the McDonald's. Like, do you know what this is doing to people's bodies? Like, rather take the time to cook the meal than go and have that instant gratification. So it's again, where is that coming from? So yes, you are saying the kids want things now, and they do. We do too. We want things to happen now. But it's the quicker I learn something, the quicker I better my world and the people's worlds around me. But also the quicker I learn something, the more I have to question. And it's bringing it back to like questioning, what am I consuming? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why is this way? Is this the only way? I even think of like how back in the day we used to stay in jobs for 40 years because it's like it's stability. The longer you're in the job, the more knowledge you have. And I see the struggle in the conversations I have with like people a little bit more experienced than me, age wise, that these Gen X, they just want to move from job to job. Like they're not happy here, then they quit and then they go to another job or they change their careers. And I'm like, that's because they're not settling. Like they're not settling. They know that they are able to create in whatever spaces they go. So it's that type of thinking that we need to shift. Right? You can have how many careers in your life?
Well, yes, you can. I mean, why not? You know, why?
Yeah.
There's another question. Why? You know. Um, but I want to throw a little bit of an argument on the table for you, because there are certain things that do take time, and I normally refer to it as the farm principle. You know, if you take a seed and you put it in the ground, you can water it as much as you want. It's going to take its normal time to grow.
Yeah.
Once you can harvest it, you need to leave it with time. So there is space and room for something that needs to take its time. But I love the way how you phrase the fact that the instant gratification is the wrong accusation that we need to throw at the kids. It's, you know, we our older generation tend to use that as a derogatory term to say instant
Yeah.
gratification is wrong. You need to learn to wait. You phrased it so well, and I mean I'm guilty of that myself. So I'll admit. And that's why I'm so interested in what you said. That if we rephrase it not as instant gratification but as faster learning, it becomes appealing, you know, to use what you can to be faster. And I'm thinking again back to the farm principle. You know, 200, 300, 400 years ago, it took you like a month to plow a field because you had to walk behind the oxen. Now, in the industrial age, you can get on a tractor and you can do it in an afternoon, type of thing. Does the tractor make you stupid because you're now doing it faster? No. The seed still needs time to grow. But to prepare the fields is faster because you are using technology wisely. So, what do you make of that distinction between, first of all, what should take long? You can't force it, and you know what can take sooner, and changing that can take sooner concept from instant gratification to working more efficiently.
I love your analogy. I love how you give me back what I said, and I'm like, did I say that? I'm pretty smart. But it's so true. And I think that's also why like there should be such a high emphasis. And I love how in education now our focus is so much on foundational learning. Because I'm like, that's the stuff that don't take quick. You know what I mean? The first 7 years of a child's life, that foundational learning. That's the stuff you can't rush the 7 years. 7 years is 7 years, but it's what you're putting in there in that 7 years is also prepping the land for what's to come. So, if in this foundational learning, our focus is the reading and the understanding of math, and being able to break down these complex things and questioning and being curious and exploring, then it's easier. And that is why, like, we've done a great job, man. If the next generation is wanting to use AI, like, that's us. We've done that. We have laid foundations. But now it's just for us to be like, hey, listen, you've laid that foundation, but also be knowledgeable that, or be mindful rather, that from now until 2027 or 2028, AI is going to look completely different. Like, it's going to advance at rapid speed. And because you're laying such a solid foundation in a child that is a critical thinker, in a child that is curious about their world, in a child that's questioning things, like, it's going to be even faster for them to critically want to analyze and explore whatever's new that's coming in technology. So you have to know that while you are prepping the land, like, there's stuff coming, and it's going to be easier for that child to adopt to what is coming, but you have to lay the foundation for them to adopt that, but with curiosity and critical thinking.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, the message to parents and teachers is that we have to plow the fields. It's going to take a certain amount of time, 7 years in your analogy, but whether we do it with walking behind the oxen or whether we use a modern tractor, we still need to plow the fields. And we know that we can do this faster, you know, because there are tools. But we also
Yeah.
know that that seed is going to take its time. We cannot make the seed grow faster than it grows. And we can see that there are rain clouds coming. We can see that there are storm clouds on the horizon. So we can prepare for that. but we still can use the technology. Take your phone and look at the weather app and see, where how far is the rain. So you can do some plowing today, and maybe tomorrow you do something else when it's raining. So integrating technology and speed and knowing, having the wisdom to know when speed is not a factor that can be rushed. That differentiation is part of the learning process. And when you, as an educator, deals with children, the younger generation, you call them what, Generation Alpha. Um, you know, that's the young ones, the current generation school kids. Is that correct? I'm not so familiar
Yes, yes,
with
that's
the names
correct. Yeah,
anymore because I don't know what's Gen Z and Gen Alpha and
yeah,
millennials.
that's
You know?
the current school ones, Gen
Yeah.
Alpha.
Okay, so when we deal with them, we need to be appreciative of the fact that they actually are not afraid of what's coming. We might be because it's unknown, and we've been stuck in a world that changed very slowly over the decades, and now suddenly it changes in a question of weeks and months. The whole world has changed since 2022 when
Yeah,
ChatGPT was launched, and that was like just the other day. I mean, the whole world is looking different, and it scares some people. But we need to differentiate, and I want to know what you say on this as a closing point. Do you look at AI or technology from the perspective as changing the world, or do you look at it as something that should just be judged properly for where and when it can be used? And in that judgment comes pedagogy. As an educator, remember the one thing that you have for you, that goes for you as an educator, that AI cannot take over, is your pedagogy. What do you want to say about that?
yeah. I think yes, definitely there is a marriage vantage point, a intersection, and at which a teacher should be standing and looking currently, and saying that AI is definitely going to change the world. It has already. We have been exposed to it in small little increments of like making online purchases, check a 60/60 groceries to your house. And it was subtle, right? You using it for your convenience, and you kind of feel like you have control over it. But the more it's going to expand, the more it's going to get prompted and trained, it's going to look completely different. As far as in, like, a friend of mine is in Kenya and is at a restaurant, the robot cafe, and there's a robotic waitress or waiter delivering food. So that's not in the far future. That's not like a Star Trek movie that we watched and we were like, this will never happen. That is now. And in order for us to function and to navigate this world and to help our kids, our learners, be holistic human beings that can impact the world in a way that doesn't only use technology but focuses on things like empathy and understanding human connection. We as leaders, we as the source of or the conveyor of knowledge, or standing in places where kids are looking up to us, our peers and our colleagues are looking up to us. We have to first model that we are firstly human, like you say. We are firstly human. We make errors. We learning. We can call ourselves out on our, hey, I'm guilty of that, or oops, I made that mistake or judgment in my thinking. So model that first in yourself, and then let it be reflected in the way in which you teach, or the way in which you mentor, or the way in which you engage with others. But also be open to the fact that in order for you to function in this world in a way that makes an impact, in order for you to change what you see, problems that you see, and come up with solutions, you have to embrace technology. You have to embrace AI. You have to embrace the things that are coming in order to make the world that we live in a better place, to solve problems that don't yet exist, that we could have predicted, that we see coming in the future. So yeah, to find that intersection in which you remain human, but you function in a world in which you can bring a change and an impact. So together with AI, you will change the world, starting with your world.
Well, let's conclude with the words of my latest guest. With AI, you can take over the world. You know,
World domination.
world domination with a cup of coffee.
With a cup of coffee and your creativity, let's take over the world.
But anyway, Giselle, thank you very much. This has been an insightful and profound conversation. I really have learned a lot from the way you phrase things. You know, the way you think about it is so insightful that it made me think of a couple of things differently. And I'm always open to question. You know, I always question everything. That's my nature. Nothing is ever set in stone because it said so. But I had a couple of mindsets about certain things which you have changed in this conversation. So thank you for that. I really appreciate your time and for you coming on board. And if there's a last comment that you want to throw out to the kids and the educators and the parents out there, you're more than welcome.
I just want to say I'm so excited for the world that we live in. If I look at my own kid and I look at the kids around me and I look at the teachers that I work with, like I know that there is hope in this world. And I know that no matter what technology comes, no matter what adversity we'll face, like if we stay constant and true and like just try to embrace people's authenticity, but also just show them that the potential that they have is within them and they can become whoever they dream of becoming at whatever time of their life they want to do that, then I think we'll be a better world for it.
Okay.
And I really just want to thank you so much for this opportunity, for this time, for you reaching out. It's been an absolute pleasure engaging with you.
Well, thank you very much. And you must enjoy the rest of your day. And please tell your son I say kudos. You know, from
I
me,
will.
I love the fact that he is so curious and passionate about mathematics. It is something that you should treasure and something that you should
I
nurture
will, and I shall nurture that from the math mechanic himself.
from the math mechanic himself. Yeah, okay.